Married at First Sight, season 14, episode 13, and this is the after party, y'all. And on tonight's after party, it was Olajuwon, it was Steve, and it was Mark. They called them the Boston boys, the Boston men, as they say. And tonight's drink was a mystery mezcal, and it was a take on the margarita for all the mystery, I guess, surrounding these conversations. And in this episode, we got the okay from Steve about the $40,000. He signed off on it because Keisha Knight Pulliam brought up the fact that last week when Noi was asked to give a number on what would make her feel comfortable, she said 40,000, and Steve said, well, I got her covered, no problem. Just like we said. I told y'all in about the money, that is not the problem. That's why Noi never really wants to talk about it, because that's not the real problem. If you watch my video about Steve and Noi this week, you'll see more of what I was talking about when I said what she wants to be is a stay-at-home mom, and she was jealous of the life that Steve gave for her. But in this episode, I'm not going to talk about it all here because it ain't part of the after party. It's really part of my Noi and Steve video. Once he told her she could take some time off work, you see how happy she got? Like I said, she was jealous of the life. Once he told her they could start working on the baby in the first year, guess what she was? She was happy because she could stay at home with them babies. I told y'all, this ain't about necessarily what Steve does. This is about making sure that she can be a stay-at-home mom and have them babies. And as long as she gets that, Noi ain't going nowhere. But Steve talked about the fact all these little messy social media posts that she does, that his family was starting to look at her horribly. And when he was trying to get her to stop, it wasn't just because of what she was doing to him. It was because people were looking at her sideways. Steve said he was getting messages from his sister-in-law, his sister, his cousin, and everybody else talking about what is she doing. So she was looking bad in front of everybody, and he was trying to save her reputation. And then he brought up the fact that she's a walking contradiction, because at first she's talking about she doesn't even want to move in together, but then she's talking about having babies in the first year. Well, how the hell are we going to do that? Have conjugal visits? Like I said, Noi talks out two sides of her mouth. Noi ain't going nowhere. She likes to sometimes use certain tactics to try to manipulate Steve to get her way, but she's just immature. She's immature in how she deals with a lot of things. Steve has said he's done plenty of entrepreneurial adventures before. He's built phone apps. He's built software. He's done a lot of things. So he's really not worried about the money. And I'm telling you, that ain't the issue with Noi either. As long as there's enough money that she can stay at home, Noi ain't going to have no problem with what Steve does. Not at all. But all the men seem to have a really good bond together because they were giving all each other advice back and forth on how they can handle situations differently. But you know, much of the show was dedicated to Olajuwon because, like I said in my video with Olajuwon and Katina, he got foot in the mouth disease when it comes to Olajuwon. He knows how to put his foot in his mouth all the time. But after Steve started talking about them having babies, him and Noi, Keisha Knight asked Olajuwon, do you think you and Katina could have some babies? And he was like, oh yeah, Katina's going to be a great mom. She works so hard. She's such a dedicated person. He says she's going to make an excellent mother. Mark was like, we don't need to be talking about no kids, because one time we talking about divorce and kids. He's like, we need to worry about one thing at a time. And we know he barely hanging on with a thread. Who knows? By now, at the time of this taping, these two probably ain't even together. Keisha Knight Pulliam said, what are the inconsistencies that Lindsay keeps talking about to you, Mark? What is she talking about? And he's like, basically, he said what she doesn't like is that we're together. When we're together and we're good, we have a wonderful time together. But then after she pops off, he says he retreats, he separates. And that's what she doesn't like. But he says he doesn't understand why she thinks he would want to sit through that and listen to the way she talks to him and thinks he's still going to stick by his side. Like I told you before, that's what Lindsay wants. Lindsay wants you to be consistent and accepting of all her bullshit. Like I've been telling people, all this anger that Lindsay's got is a cover-up for her fear. And they might say it's sadness and fear, everything else. It's just a cover-up. And that's what she leads with. These two trigger each other. And I'm glad that finally in this episode, they finally got to the bottom of Mark and Lindsay's problems. And what I told you before, they trigger each other. That's why I keep saying there were two peas in a pod. Trigger each other, both from their trauma and tragedies in their life. These two should not be together. This is like two crack addicts trying to get sober living together. This can't happen. Neither one of them have the tools to help the other person. They both need to go to therapy on their own before they're going to be good in any type of relationship, to be honest with you. And Lindsay is the worst one of all because she's the one that actually gets it started. She gets it started, and then Mark just follows behind, and it becomes one big spiral. But it's a complete mess. Mark says Lindsay loves to lash out because whenever she feels hurt, she wants him to feel all the hurt as well. So she comes back at him with that old nasty tongue so he can feel just as hurt as she feels. And Olajuwon said he's told Lindsay up on the roof plenty of times that she needs to work on her delivery. I guess he should be telling himself that as well, because his delivery ain't too much better than Lindsay's delivery. But he says, you know what? When your delivery is like that, everybody puts up a wall to you. So, Olajuwon is learning a lot of things. He has learning as he goes. I know a lot of people don't like Olajuwon because of, where he started, and he does need a lot of work. But the thing, like I said about Olajuwon, is I think he does make progress. It may be small. It may not be as big as a lot of people like, but he does make progress. And all his buddies, all the men, they vouched for him. They talked about how, it's weird that everybody says that Olajuwon belittles Katina, because every time they're around Katina and Olajuwon is constantly praising Katina and lifting her up and saying all these wonderful things about her. So you know what? I think Olajuwon, one of the things I think he's upset about is I think he is getting sort of this one-sided edit, kind of just showing him the angry person. Now, does he say those words? Absolutely. Does he put his foot in his mouth? Absolutely. But one of the things he talks about what ticked him off with Dr. Pepper, he says he acknowledges that his communication is not on point, and that he needs to communicate and deliver his point a little bit better. And even Steve chimed in and said, yeah, you know what? Delivery is important. He says it doesn't come off right, and he says he wished he would have stayed more calm when he was talking to Dr. Pepper, because one, it made him look like he was guilty or he was lying, and it was neither one of that. What he said, he was really just trying to protect his marriage because he felt under attack. He said one of the words that really ticked him off about Dr. Pepper was when Dr. Pepper was talking about, I heard. And he said what Dr. Pepper didn't do was Dr. Pepper didn't come to me and ask me any questions. And he said he didn't like that. He said she just came at him and started judging him. And he said what he didn't like was all this he said, she said. And she said he wished that Dr. Pepper would ask him some questions. And you know what? I know a lot of people don't like Olajuwon, but I'm going to agree with him, because with everybody else, what these experts did was they got to the root of the anger. They got to the root of the anger with Lindsay, and they said it was her sadness. They got to the root of Mark's anger, and they talked about his problems with his mother. They got to the root of with Jasmina. They got to the root with Michael, and they got the root with Noi. But with Olajuwon, did we hear anything about them going back in his past and getting to the root of how he expresses himself? No. They did come right off and start judging him. I'm going to agree with him. There was a concerted effort to try to help everybody else and go deep with everybody else. But Olajuwon, nobody really asked him, hey, where does this come from? And Olajuwon picked up on that. And that's what he said. He said that's why he went straight into defense mode, because he felt that he was under attack. I think he felt that the producers were feeding negative information to Dr. Pepper. And when he talked about he was trying to catch Dr. Pepper up, I think what he was saying was Dr. Pepper was bringing up old news, that old news about you can't cook and clean. And what Olajuwon was trying to say was we was way past that. That happened in week 2 of the marriage. Here we are in week now 5 or 6 of the marriage, and you're bringing up old stuff. Why not bring up something that's relevant today that can help us move forward? And Olajuwon didn't like the fact that she was bringing up old stuff. He didn't like that because he felt that he had moved past it. He had felt that he and Katina had gotten past that and they were moving on. And he didn't like the fact they were bringing up old stuff. But did he jump too fast at Dr. Pepper? I think he did. I think he was way too sensitive over it and way too emotional over it. I understand his point, but I still think he handled the situation wrongly and poorly. But Steve said something good. Steve told him, just like you might have the expectation in delivering your message of the homemaking part with Katina, she should have the expectation that you learn how to deliver your messages better. I was like, get him, Steve. That's some really good advice. And Olajuwon shook his head and agreed. But you know what? It bodes well for Olajuwon that even when you hear Jasmina, when you hear Michael, when you have Steve, and when you hear Mark, they all actually say very nice things about Olajuwon. So I do think there's some truth to what side we're seeing with Olajuwon. We're definitely seeing the worst of Olajuwon that there is, but I don't think we're seeing the other things that balance it out, because I think Olajuwon does do a lot of sweet things for Katina, and we just don't see those things. Olajuwon said that day when they were playing volleyball and the experts snuck up on them, he said he was kind of happy to see it. He said because that night before, after he had met with Dr. Pepper, he said he was so disturbed he couldn't sleep the whole night. And he said he told Katina that he couldn't wait for all of us to be in the room with the experts. Because what he was saying was all this he said, she said stuff. He wanted the people to be in the room so that the experts could hear from the horse's mouth, which is Katina, and not hear it through the producers. Keisha and I Pulliam said that, well, did this help you and Katina unify your marriage more? He said, absolutely. He said, because one of the things they did, they sat down, they talked, and they said they had to be a lot more careful of what they say basically on camera. And he said, we figured out that we have to be a lot less reckless with our mouths. So you can already tell what he's believing is he believes that sometimes the producers are setting them up and they need to learn how to keep their mouths closed. And they asked Mark, what do you need in order? What keeps you going in a marriage? And Mark says, he does want to be the person that's there for Lindsay, but he just don't want Lindsay attacking him all the time. He's saying he can be the one that gives her unconditional love, but she's also got to see what she does to push him away. And he just wishes that she could take accountability for her side, which we know Lindsay's not going to take no accountability because, like she says, she don't want to go deep. It's way too painful for her to go deep. She really needs therapy, deep therapy. But one of the nicest things Olajuwon did say about Katina was at the end of the show, he said that, he's been with a lot of women and met a lot of women. He says, but he's never met a woman that makes him every day question who he is, but then still doesn't judge him. He said, no matter if Isaac shows up or Olajuwon shows up, Katina doesn't judge him. He says Katina is soft-spoken and she addresses him like a teacher and a learner and basically tries to teach him how he needs to express himself without judging him. And he said she is so beautiful that her character is so beautiful and that he's never met a woman like that. I told you, Olajuwon is in love. He has been in love. Just like Pastor Cal got him all together about him trying to say he wasn't in love with her during the episode. He said, man, you in love. If you don't want to be with nobody else and you 100% committed to her, that is love. Thank you, Pastor Cal. But I have other videos up of the individual couples of this week. Check them out right here. Click on the picture and you can watch the other videos of the other couples. Talk to you later. Bye.